From Washington, D.C., this is the Muslim News on Muslim Network TV. Assalamu alaikum, I'm Hena Zuberi. Our top story tonight, devastation in Europe. The death toll from the disastrous floods in Europe soared to at least 108 on Friday. Most of the dead are in Western Germany, where emergency responders are frantically searching for 1,300 missing people. Adding to the devastation, several more were feared dead in a landslide triggered by floods in northern Germany. Belgium, Luxembourg, and the Netherlands were also hammered by heavy rains, causing flooding in many areas and forcing thousands to be evacuated. German Chancellor Angela Merkel is in Washington, D.C., meeting with U.S. President Joe Biden. She said on Thursday that the full extent of the disaster will only be seen in the coming days. German President Frank-Walter Steinmeier is urging a more determined battle against global warming in light of the devastation. In Saudi Arabia, pilgrims are arriving to begin their Hajj pilgrimage. The country has, for a second consecutive year, confined Hajj to a limited number of Saudi residents. Normally, over 2 million Muslims from around the world take part in Hajj. This year, only 60,000 vaccinated residents of Saudi Arabia are allowed to make the pilgrimage. Hajj is one of the 5 pillars of Islam that every financially and physically able Muslim is obliged to perform at least once in their lifetime. Globally, millions of Muslims save money for years to go on Hajj. Worshippers from populous Asian countries like Indonesia and Pakistan, 2 of the world's largest Muslim countries, make up a large portion of Hajj participants. Many wait for years to get to the front of the line to make the journey. This is Jumaina, a 65-year-old Indonesian woman. She saved money from her home-based small business for the pilgrimage. This is Muhammad Saleem Butt from Rawalpindi, Pakistan. After postponing his liver treatment to save up for Hajj, he's devastated that he will not be able to go. This is Samia Ahmed from Egypt. She saved up for 16 years to go on Hajj. She cried for days when restrictions were announced last year, months after the coronavirus pandemic hit. Hajj is widely seen as the high point in a Muslim's religious life. It brings millions of fellow believers together to fulfill a spiritual obligation at Islam's holiest sites. Among many other rites of Hajj, pilgrims walk around the cube-shaped Kaaba 7 times and run between the hills of Safa and Marwa 7 times. A day after the Indian government announced a ban on animal sacrifices for Eid, the decision was reversed. After outrage, Muslims will be able to offer ritual sacrifice. The Associated Press reports that the Indian government in Indian-controlled Kashmir had banned the sacrifice of animals during the upcoming Eid holiday. It is unclear why the government issued a near-total ban on sacrificing animals when it has permitted this for years. Eid al-Adha, or Feast of Sacrifice, is marked by prayers and slaughtering livestock, usually a goat, sheep, cow, or a camel. This is to commemorate a test of faith faced by Prophet Abraham. The meat of the sacrificed animals is shared amongst family, friends, and the poor. India has almost 1 million soldiers stationed in Kashmir to suppress frequent protests and armed insurgencies against its occupation of the region. Los Angeles County has reinstated its mask mandate regardless of vaccination status. The death rate in the United States has started rising again after months of decline. This followed a more than doubling of infection rates, which are still rising in 49 states. Infections and deaths have started rising in the United States as well as in the rest of the world. An Alabama military base has announced that it will require proof of coronavirus vaccination for service members who wish to go without a face mask while on duty. Post-COVID conditions were found in 19% of patients whose cases lacked symptoms. This was the finding of a major study that tracked the health insurance records of nearly 2 million people in the United States who who contracted the virus last year. It found that 1 month or more after their infection, 23% of them sought medical treatment for new conditions. The study was done by Fair Health, a nonprofit organization. The report noted that long-term COVID can affect nearly every organ system. Dr. Ziad Al-Ali is the Chief of Research and Development Services at the VA, St. Louis Healthcare System. The New York Times quoted him as saying that some patients may experience chronic conditions that will last a lifetime. Ranging from most to least common symptoms include pain, breathing difficulties, hyperlipidemia, malaise, fatigue, and hypertension. As US President Joe Biden and German Chancellor Angela Merkel met on Thursday, protesters demanded Germany allow the Pfizer vaccine to be produced without patents. This is Melanie Foley, International Campaigns Director for Public Citizens Global Trade Watch.
Chancellor Merkel is essentially alone in blocking the rest of the world from getting this temporary waiver of intellectual property monopolies for COVID-19 vaccines and preventing the pandemic from ending. So we're really urging President Biden and Chancellor Merkel to use this meeting to talk about whatever issues they may have and get movement on this waiver as soon as possible.
President Biden thanked Chancellor Merkel at a joint press conference from the White House for being a stalwart champion of the Transatlantic Alliance. The two leaders discussed climate change and COVID-19 vaccination distributions, amongst other subjects. Merkel also addressed the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, which is an area of disagreement with the United States. British newspaper The Guardian is reporting that it has seen evidence that Russia launched a secret multi-agency effort to interfere in America's democracy. According to the leaked papers, Vladimir Putin personally authorized a top-secret operation for former US President Donald Trump to become president. The experts and scholars engaged by The Guardian believe that the documents suggest Russia's plot is authentic. They define the goal of Russia's operation to create social turmoil in the US. The Kremlin has called the document great pulp fiction. Colombian mercenaries say they were hired to capture Haitian President Jovenel Moïse and hand him over to the United States Drug Enforcement Administration. Colombian police shared this news as the mercenaries remain in their custody for President Jovenel's assassination in Port-au-Prince on July the 7th. Colombian intelligence agents are cooperating with Haitian authorities in investigating the murder. 2 Americans of Haitian descent and 26 Colombians took part in the operation at the president's home. Moise's wife, Martine Jovenel, was also shot and wounded in the attack. One of the Haitian Americans arrested has been an informant for the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration, a DEA official said on Monday. The Taliban have offered a 3-month ceasefire. Al Jazeera is reporting that this is in exchange for the release of 7,000 fighters held in prisons. The Taliban are also asking for the removal of their leaders from the United Nations blacklist. A spokesperson for the Afghan government's negotiation team in Qatar's capital, Doha, said that it was a big demand. The Taliban and the Afghan government are currently in negotiations in Doha. Pulitzer Prize-winning photojournalist Danish Siddiqui was killed in Afghanistan yesterday, covering the clashes. Turkey marked the 5th anniversary of a failed coup yesterday. On July 15, 2016, a rogue faction in the military tried to take over the country using warplanes and tanks to attack government buildings. Some 250 people died and more than 2,000 were injured. Over 321,000 people have been detained since 2016, according to Interior Minister Süleyman Soylu. July 15 in Turkey is marked as a somber anniversary, like that of the 9/11 attacks in the United States. President Tayyip Erdogan thanked citizens who fought back the coup attempt. He also vowed to continue the fight against what he called traitors. As a precautionary measure to prevent COVID-19 infections during Hajj, direct contact with staff is being avoided. Robots began handing out bottles of sacred water in Mecca. Details are in this report by Sher Dilhan and Saleha Farouk.
Smart robots distribute holy water from the Zamzam well to pilgrims in a bid to avoid contact between workers and people amid COVID precautions ahead of the coming Hajj season at the holy site of Mecca.
أهداف الريموت هو تقديم الخدمة الذاتية بدون أي تلامس بشري، وهذه تعتبر من ضمن الخدمات المقدمة من الرئاسة العامة لشؤون المسجد الحرام والمسجد النبوي. العدد الموجود الآن تقريبا 20 ريموت آلي جاهز إن شاء الله لخدمة الزوار وحجيج بيت الله الحرام إن شاء الله الموسم هذا الحج، والعدد قابل للزيادة بإذن الله إذا دعت الحاجة.
Saudi Arabia says it will allow 60,000 residents vaccinated against COVID to perform this year's Hajj, but Muslims from abroad will be barred for a second year straight.
Almost 1.8 billion Muslims across the world are celebrating Eid al-Adha on July 20th, 2021. This day celebrates the willingness of Prophet Ibrahim, Ismail, and Hajra to be obedient to God's commands. More details in this report by Ali Khalaf and Saleha Farouk.
There are two Eids that Muslims celebrate. The first is Eid al-Fitr, which comes after the month of Ramadan. The second is Eid al-Adha, which follows the completion of the annual Hajj pilgrimage. The day of Eid al-Adha falls on the 10th day of the final 12th month of the Islamic lunar calendar, Dhul Hijjah. The celebration of Eid al-Adha is to commemorate Prophet Ibrahim's devotion to Allah and his readiness to sacrifice his son Ismail. At the very point of sacrifice, Allah Almighty replaced Ismail with a ram, which was to be slaughtered in place of his son. This command from Allah was a test of Prophet Ibrahim's willingness and commitment to obey his Lord's command without question. In commemoration of this intervention, animals are sacrificed in the name of God. 1/3 of their meat is consumed by the family, while the rest is distributed to the poor and needy. Sweets and gifts are given, especially for kids. Eid al-Adha will last 4 days.
Coming up next after the break is our in-depth analysis segment with Saleha Farouk. So stay tuned and we'll be right back after these messages.
If I could be you, and you could be me for just 1 hour. If we could find a way to get inside each other's minds. Walk a mile in my shoes. Walk a mile in my shoes. Well, before you abuse, criticize, and accuse. Walk a mile in my shoes.
Despite the development of a COVID-19 vaccine, millions around the world will not have access. We need a vaccine that's free and available to everyone, everywhere. It's time for a people's vaccine.
Welcome back. Eid al-Adha is celebrated on the final day of the annual Hajj pilgrimage to Mecca, the holiest city in Islam. To learn more about Hajj and the concept behind the sacrifice of Eid al-Adha, let's go to Saleha Farouk. Over to you, Saleha.
Thank you once again. Today we're very happy to be joined by Sheikh Hashim Ahmed, who is an American Islamic scholar, as well as a teacher at the Darul Falah Center in California. Sheikh Hashim, thank you so much for your valuable time today.
Well, thank you for inviting me. It's an honor to be here. Jazakumullah khair. Allah bless you all.
Interestingly, Muslims who live in Saudi Arabia might have a chance to attend the Hajj pilgrimage again this year, if of course they have been vaccinated. But this will in fact be the second year in a row that global Muslims such as ourselves and many around us are barred from making that journey to Hajj or Umrah. What are the reactions of religious leaders or regular Muslims around you, and perhaps yourself? What do you think about that?
Yeah, well, we think it's very horrific and it's very significant. At the same time, we have to, we recognize the fact that everything that happens in this universe is according to the master plan of the creator of the universe, because nothing is coincident. We don't believe that there's anything by coincidence. It's all by design and plan. And so this has this all fits into the greater plan, and it has its significance. At the same time, it also points to the fact that we are getting closer to the final chapter of this world. These type of very nearly, you could say, unprecedented or very horrific type of events which are taking place. This is probably, an indication, among other things, the pandemic itself, and the fact that the barring from Hajj, this is all indicating that we're getting close, to more, horrific events, which will, become in the, close to the day of the resurrection, and then the day of the final day of judgment. So we're getting close, and of course we have to keep in mind that the day of judgment for each one of us is the day of our death, which we don't know when that's going to be. So we need to be prepared for that at any moment of our existence. So Allah give us all tawfiq.
Now, this will also, of course, be the second Eid al-Adha that people will experience during this pandemic. What are perhaps congregants looking forward to when it comes to Eid this year? And do you think perhaps that Eid al-Fitr has helped us learn any lessons along the way that you might be able to share with us?
Well, of course, this year is not as severe as last year. Last year was like it was a new experience, and it was, I don't know about other places. There's some of the places are still, observing lockdown. Here in California, things have pretty much gone back to normal. Here in the masjid itself, we're back to normal. There's no social distancing. People wear masks, but it's pretty much, back to normal. However, having been, deprived of a normal Eid and the normal, proceeding for Hajj, and a lot of people go for Hajj. I myself was supposed to, take a group last year. I was supposed to take a group again this year, and of course that didn't happen. And so, sometimes, if not most of the time, if not all of the time, when we have, a particular blessing of Allah, that is continuous without interruption, we tend to take it for granted. Now, we don't take these things for granted. At least, I think most people are realizing that these are great blessings. We need to, show our gratitude. And if, it's the principle of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that if we show our gratitude, He increases us. And if we don't show gratitude, we show ingratitude, then we lose those blessings and we might be, bereft. So I think that's pretty much what people are feeling, and they're very glad to be back in the masjids and, celebrating Eid as normal. This Eid al-Fitr also we celebrated normally in the masjid, and again, of course, Eid al-Adha will be celebrating naturally and normally again this year, inshallah.
We wanted to ask you about the various lessons of sacrifice from Eid al-Adha and what people can perhaps learn about that, and especially resonating from such a difficult pandemic year. What would you say?
Okay, so we have to understand what is the whole concept behind that. Sacrifice. It's not just, we're just slaughtering animals and eating and having a celebration. There's a whole history behind that. And this is the part of the fifth pillar of Islam, which is Hajj. And it all relates and is all connected to the very purpose of our existence, which is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told us, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونِ. He has not created us except to be a manifestations of His servitude and His obedience. And so to drive home this, or to, bring this concept of obedience into our minds and hearts, and bring it practically on the limbs of our body and in all of our practices and activities in life. So we have these ibadat, these acts of worship, which train us to do so. Now the Hajj is very significant because it is a conglomeration of every type of worship and every type of sacrifice, by the way. And this sacrifice goes back to the time of Abraham. By the way, Hajj, or this pilgrimage, is not something that was instituted by Muhammad, peace be upon him. It was instituted by the prophet Abraham on the instructions of God himself, of Allah himself. And so the Hajj, the pilgrimage that we perform these days, to this very day, it was originally performed by Abraham. And behind that is a huge succession of multiple sacrifices. Number one, he was ordered to leave Palestine, which is a beautiful place, and it's a beautiful climate, and his family and everything, was all, just beautifully, appropriate for him. And he's ordered by Allah to take his wife and his son, who is just a newborn son, suckling on the mother's breast, and take them to Makkah Mukarramah, take them to Makkah in the middle of the desert, where there's nothing, there's no one, there's no means of sustaining human life even. Leave them there at the order of God, at the order of Allah, and now proceed. So sacrifice, why? Because to prove that we are sincerely for our Creator, we need to show that we're prepared to sever all of the connections with all of the creation for the sake of showing obedience to the Creator. So this was a very severe test to the prophet Abraham. Now to take his wife and to take his child and leave them there in Mecca to establish, and what was the whole point? The whole point was to establish this concept of connection with the Creator and establishing a center. And that's why we face there in our prayers, and even in all of our acts of worship, we try to face and point towards Mecca itself, to the Kaaba. And at that point, Kaaba was not actually built. And later on, a series of sacrifices. And ultimately, after even that huge sacrifice of just leaving one's land and then leaving one's child and one's wife, in a foreign place, now a further and much more difficult, order comes from the Creator, that now, as your son has come to age, and by the way, as we probably know, Abraham was waiting, almost to the age of 100 years of age for a progeny that's going to carry on his legacy. And now God says, okay, no, you're going to sacrifice this child. Allahu Akbar, Can you imagine, any of us, So now he proceeds back to Makkah, and now taking the advice or taking his son into confidence that, God has told me that I have to sacrifice you. To what do you say? The son says, do what you're told, oh father. So everybody's on the page. In other words, we are prepared to sacrifice our desires, our comforts, our whatever, for the sake of the obedience of our Creator, who has put us into his existence and sustains us. And so Allah doesn't want to take away our children. He doesn't want us to slaughter our children. He wants to test us to see, is His love and His obedience foremost and the top priority in our lives. So when Abraham and his son have shown total submission to that order, so God sent a sheep in lieu of that sacrifice, saying, we don't need the blood of your son. Sacrifice this sheep and celebrate the fact that you have passed the test. And so that sacrifice that we do every year, which is also part of the Hajj, and also for every Muslim who has the capability to offer that sacrifice in memory of the fact that is what our religion is all about, to establish our connection and our total subservience to the Creator and be ready to sacrifice. And if we do so, we should celebrate that He's not going to give us a burden that we can't bear. So remembering all of these things, that's part of the whole process of Eid. So it is a recognition of sacrifice, at the same time a celebration for the success of the trial of our ancestor Abraham, and the success that we have been guided towards, that very religion, and his success, inshallah, will be ours, and hopefully all of mankind's.
Thank you so much for that beautiful insight. You mentioned a few points there that lead us to our next question, especially on this idea of sacrifice. And you also alluded to this in the beginning slightly, that yourself, as well as so many other people, that 2 years in a row now, you're unable to actually attend the pilgrimage of Hajj. Now, going to Hajj or going to the Kaaba, doing Umrah is something that is special to a lot of people, whether that person is born Muslim or whether they are a revert, so on and so forth. A lot of people are having this canceled Hajj, this concept, very hard-hitting to them. It does cause a lot of feelings of sadness or unhappiness amongst a lot of people that might have prepared all year, or that might have been looking forward to go. If you could share any words of wisdom or lend any kind of strength to those individuals that might be hit hard by not being able to go to Hajj this year.
Absolutely, yeah. Of course, that would, as I said, I myself, I was, supposed to take two groups myself, although I used to live in Mecca and I've performed Hajj many times by the grace of Allah. But every Muslim, his heart is connected and he wants to go. And now he's prepared and he saved up his money. And some people, they're saving the life savings, and it's a one time in a lifetime, opportunity. So obviously it's going to be a huge, a huge, sort of trauma. However, as we alluded earlier, as Prophet ﷺ just capsulized the whole concept so beautifully in saying, "Ajaban li amril mu'min fin amru kulluhu lahu khair." The Prophet Muhammad, peace be on him, said, it's a very amazing affair that every aspect of the life of a mu'min, the person with iman, it is khair, it's good for them, whether it's good, bad, or otherwise. In asabatu sarra shakar fakana khairan lahu. If he gets that, if what happens is, favorable for him, it's something that goes along with his desires and his wants and his wishes, then he shows gratitude and it's good for him. It's good for him in this world, it's good for him in the next world. He'll get reward for that. Not only getting what he wants, he'll get reward in the next world. And if on the other hand, in the sabatu darra sabr fakana khairan lahu, right? It's so, if something happens that is not, according to our desires, it goes against our desires, it's a trauma, it seems to be a catastrophe or a dilemma. So what happens is that we understand that this is also from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so we have to be patient. And not only that, whatever is happening, it's for our betterment. Wallahu ya'lamu wa antum la ta'lamun. Allah knows and we don't know, And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, perhaps you love a thing and it's not good for you. Perhaps you dislike a thing and it's better for you. And Allah knows and you do not. We don't know what's in our best interest. Like a small child, he doesn't realize candy is not good for your teeth. He doesn't realize staying up late at night is going to, perhaps have an impact on my my life's career, et cetera, et cetera. So similarly, like small children, we don't have the insight into what's in our best interest. So what's happening to us is in our best interest. Whether we can understand the wisdom behind it or not, we'd have to, have that belief that Prophet ﷺ has told us that, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has also mentioned. Lastly, the glad tidings for those people who have suffered some type of loss, and this is a huge loss. What do? They say, "Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un." To Allah, we are for Allah, and back to Him we return. And so for those people, as the Quran mentions, they will have the special blessings and favors from Allah, and a special mercy. And these are people who are rightly guided. So all we have to do in the face of that is, okay, Allah knows best, I accept it, and we are for Allah, and Allah is, we are going to return. And so Allah is going to give us all of these blessings and rewards. So it's actually better for us, And who knows what might have happened if we would have been for Hajj. So everything that happens, we have to, look at it from that perspective. It's better for us. We understand it, we don't. May Allah give me and all of us the ability to actually have that kind of acceptance in mind and heart. Ameen to Ameen.
Ameen. Thank you so much for that wisdom. Today we're speaking with Sheikh Hashim Ahmed, who is an American Islamic scholar as well as a teacher at Darul Falah in California. Sheikh Hashim, in light of the second canceled Hajj this year, thank you so much for your time and your insight today.
Jazakumullah khair. It's great being here. Allah bless you all.
Back to the new studio.
Thank you, Saleha. Let's take a quick break and we'll be right back after these messages.
Our fellow Americans.
Right now, the COVID-19 vaccines are available to millions of Americans.
And soon, they will be available to everyone.
The science is clear. These vaccines will protect you and those you love from this dangerous and deadly disease.
They could save your life.
So we urge you to get vaccinated when it's available to you.
That's the first step to ending the pandemic and moving our country forward. It's up to you.
Dad, they took over my bedroom. Come on, come on. Okay, Dad. 1, 2, 3. Dad! You saved me. Dad?
Are you okay?
I'm fine, dear.
Your hero needs you now, and AARP is here to help. Find the care guides you need at aarp.org/caregiving.
Today, we mourn the death of Indian Muslim photojournalist Danish Siddiqui. His iconic images include those of Rohingya landing in Cox's Bazar, the Hong Kong protests, footage of mass cremation of COVID victims in India, as well as those from the farmers' protests. His coverage of the Rohingya refugee crisis brought international attention to the cause and won his team a Pulitzer Prize. Danish, a brave journalist, was killed in the Spin Buldak region of Afghanistan. He was embedded with the Afghan Special Forces Combat and Rescue Mission, which came under Taliban attack. Based out of Mumbai, 40-year-old Danish worked for Reuters for over a decade. Muslim Network TV would like to extend condolences to his family, his colleagues, and all of those that followed his work around the world. That's all from our Washington studios tonight. Thank you for tuning in. You can find previous episodes and more on our YouTube and Facebook. Keep watching Muslim Network TV. Assalamu alaikum and good night.